So last year I made a list of all the games that I was interested in for 2024, and one of the games on that list was Path of Exile 2. And the reason I put Path of Exile 2 on there is because I always felt like I missed the boat on the original Path of Exile because I chose to play Diablo 3 instead. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, before I got completely addicted to the Soul series From Software and the Monster Hunter series, my favorite game of all time was actually Diablo 2. I used to be an absolute Diablo 2 fiend. So when Blizzard announced Diablo 3, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to jump in. And Path of Exile, I just kind of like threw it on the wayside, which looking back on that decision, it was actually one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. I should have actually learned Path of Exile and abandoned Diablo 3, but at the time, hindsight's 2020 and all that, right? But anyways, suffice it to say that once I jumped into Diablo 3, disappointment came shortly after. And ever since then, I never really jumped back into Path of Exile in any real capacity because I always just felt like all of the systems that game has felt very overwhelming, and I never took the time to actually learn how to play the game. Which, again, massive mistake. This is why last year I was like, no. When Path of Exile 2 comes out, I need to learn it. I don't want to miss out on this game a second time. I want to jump in on the ground floor, learn all the systems, learn all of that stuff because, everybody's been saying that Path of Exile is the actual successor to Diablo 2, and therefore Path of Exile 2 would be the natural evolution of what that formula should be. And that is one of the things that just kind of like kept me very curious about the game. So as we started approaching its release, because the game is releasing in early access this Friday, I started doing research, started looking into videos, started looking into gameplay and all of that stuff. And I gotta say, initially it was just curiosity. Now I'm just like, I need to play this game. Like the stuff that these developers are doing for this game is absolutely insane. We watched the showcase that they had going, and my head was spinning with all of the end game systems that the game is going to have. But I figured I would make a video to kind of introduce you guys to this game in case you guys are considering jumping into it, whether that is during the early access period or once it exits early access later down the line. So, what is Path of Exile 2? Path of Exile 2 is a dark and gritty ARPG. So this is a top-down view game, isometric perspective, very much in a similar vein to Diablo. And so the story is going to be dark and gritty. There's going to be a lot of gore. So if you like those types of themes that you get from Diablo, then you're going to be getting those in Path of Exile. Like I said, one of the references that people always say and that the developers themselves say is that they have always been massively inspired by Diablo 2. And what Blizzard has been doing with Diablo 3 and Diablo 4 doesn't really even come close to what we've seen in that presentation. Whether or not that is going to actually be that enjoyable in the game itself, I'll only find out next Friday when I actually jump in and start playing, which I'm going to be streaming here on the channel, so you guys might want to check that out. However, I also believe that their servers are probably going to explode, so if you are tuning in on Friday, expect some instability. However, because of you guys, I have some keys to give away, so on Friday I'm also going to be giving away a couple of keys to the early access of this game. Now, it is important to mention that this game is going to be free to play, and I already know from my audience that this is going to raise a couple of alarm bells. You guys are going to be like, okay, free to play, what's the catch? That's always the situation, right? We're always thinking, okay, so what's the catch with the free to play? Are they going to sell XP boosters? Are they going to sell like special skill gems on the store? Like, is it going to be pay to win? What's the situation here? And no, absolutely not. Path of Exile is not going to be pay to win at all. So what can you buy with currency, considering that the game is going to be free to play? Now, they're going to be selling a lot of cosmetic stuff that you can have because the game has like its own housing system. I don't know exactly how the housing system is going to work in Path of Exile 2, but I know that Path of Exile 1 has like this hideout, and you can buy a bunch of stuff and decorations to put on your hideout. You can buy a bunch of like armor sets that you can wear on your character that are going to be cosmetic. You can buy pets that don't actually do anything in game, just to, follow you around and do all of that stuff. So these are going to be things that we're definitely going to be seeing come into the game. But no XP boosters, nothing that can actually give you power in game. But there is one thing that does have a bit of a gameplay effect, and that is the fact that you can buy additional stash tabs. And some of these stash tabs will have like different functionality. Like I believe in order for you to be able to do proper trading with players, you need like a premium stash tab or something. I don't know exactly how those work, but stash tabs are going to be the only thing that actually has any in-game effect, so to speak. Now, these stash tabs is only whenever you are in town is when you get to use them, so it's not like you have additional space in your inventory or anything like that. Nothing like that. So when you're out in the world, your inventory is the same as every other player's, just when you're back in town, some other players might have bigger stashes and all of that stuff. And from what I've seen from the community, they say that you don't really need stash tabs until you get into the end game. And even when you get into the end game, if you do proper inventory management and if you're not like a super giga meta gamer, you don't really have to worry about that. But at that point, if you've invested that amount of hours into the game, I think that giving the developers like, I don't know, $40 or something like that to buy a couple of additional stash tabs should be fine. Players are already advising that if you end up buying into the early access, one of the things that you might do is hold on to your currency, because if you buy into the early access, you get an equivalent amount of money in terms of like premium currency for the game, and you should hold on to that until they do like a stash tab sale, which happens every other month or so, and then you should buy a couple of stash tabs, and that should be what you should do. But even then, like, I played the original Path of Exile recently just to kind of like get reacquainted with some of the systems in the game and all that stuff. I don't know, I'm like somewhere north of 20 hours, and I don't really feel the need for additional stash tabs at this point in the game. So like I said, it's something that only really is going to become a thing once you get to the end game. So I'd recommend, you know, just wait until you get to the end game, figure that stuff out then, and no pay to win whatsoever is definitely good stuff. So now let's talk about some of the improvements that they've done from the original Path of Exile in case you have played the original Path of Exile. So obviously one of the first things that you will notice is that there is a massive visual improvement to the game. And one of the things that I hadn't noticed until recently is just how much they've improved on the animations. And the reasoning behind this is because throughout a lot of their trailers, you know, the trailers are cut in a way where you only see little bits of animations here and there. And, you know, there's not really like lengthy sections of gameplay that they're using in their promotional material. So I always had like trouble figuring out like, okay, so are these animations improved or are they not? Because they just go by so fast. So recently I noticed that they had a video, which is probably going to be a lot of the gameplay that I'm going to be showing in this video, where they did this play session with Shuei Yoshida from you know, ex-PlayStation president or CEO, whatever, used to be a big dog over there on PlayStation. And I figured, you know, Shuei Yoshida is probably going to be somewhat of a newcomer, so they'll have to explain the gameplay from that perspective. And so I watched that video, and in there, throughout watching that gameplay is when I really became aware, wow, these animations, it's just, these have nothing to do with the original Path of Exile. Like, I'm not saying that the original Path of Exile is bad, but like, these look way more modern, these look way more fun and way more engaging, and it is a massive shift from the original Path of Exile. And that is something that I like, because when it comes to animations, that is what I focus on the most. I don't even care that much about visual fidelity. Like, if your game can reach 1080p and look okay, I don't need it to have 4K textures and blow my mind away with visual fidelity. I would prefer that you spend that time instead on animation, because animation is so much more important than visual fidelity as far as I'm concerned. And the visual the animation that they're showing, and also the visual fidelity and just the art style, the gritty art style that they're going for with Path of Exile 2 looks absolutely phenomenal. So I'm super happy about that. Then another thing that we have to talk about is the change in the way that the combat flow goes, which you can instantly tell by just looking at the gameplay that I'll be showing on screen here. But this is very different from the gameplay that you've seen on the original Path of Exile. They've completely revamped the combat system. There are now skill combos that you can do. Like, a couple of examples, if you're playing a sorceress, you can put down a firewall and then you can shoot lightning bolts through it, and the lightning bolts will pick up flames and they will deal additional damage, fire damage specifically. If you're playing a warrior, you can do like these fire fissures on the ground, and then whenever you slam or charge through those fissures, they're going to activate and deal additional damage. And there's a bunch of other combos that you can do like this. Like, there's this monk that puts down a bell and then you bang on the bell. Bell deals AoE damage, and then if you shoot lightnings at the bell also shoots lightnings out. And the cool thing is that even though there's a class system, I'll tell you guys all of the classes that are in the game in just a minute, even though there's a class system and each class is going to excel at certain things, all of the class options and all of the class skills are available to every class. So it's like if you want to play a sorceress with a crossbow, you can do that. We don't know how effective that's going to be at this point, but that is an option that you have. You equip a crossbow, you put some nodes in the passive 3 into dexterity, I would imagine, and you're going to be able to shoot your crossbow and be effective with it while still having access to the sorceress character and whatever benefits you may gain from that. And that just gives you a ton of diversity in terms of build crafting, which is already something that you can do in the original Path of Exile. But, you know, now you get to do this with all of these improved visuals, better combat system, all of that cool stuff. Now, another couple of things that they're changing is the way that minions work. So in Path of Exile, I've actually been running a minion build. Minions are more about like reserving mana and stuff like that. And you have different skill gems that will handle minions. And as they level up, you get more minions, so on and so forth. Now, minions are actually going to use a different system, which is Spirit, and it's a different resource that you have that's going to level up as you level up. And you can reserve a certain amount of Spirit to choose which type of minions you have. So let's say you have skeletal minions, zombie minions, and a bunch of other stuff, and you can just choose, okay, I want like 2 skeletons, and I want a couple of skeletal mages, and I want a skeleton priest, and then all of these consume different amounts of spirits, and you get to choose your little undead army that you're going to be summoning and taking with you based on that. And that just seemed like so cool, because then they also did things with this system wherein the witch would be, because this was in the witch showcase, wherein the summons would automatically be summoned again over time as they die. So you don't have to constantly stress about, oh, I have to be replenishing my army. It just automatically gets back up as they die. And I was just like, bro, this is so cool, because then you can just focus on doing your own thing. So you just assign your own army, and then you just focus on doing other spells and curses and stuff like that without having to worry about, oh, did this skeleton die? I got to resummon the skeleton. And I was like, bro, this is such a cool thing for minion builds. And I'm not even planning on doing a minion build on my first playthrough, but I just thought, this looks really awesome. Another really cool thing that they're also doing with the combat is that this time around, Path of Exile is going to have active dodging and, more importantly, active blocking, because we've seen active dodging in other RPGs, like Diablo 4 also has active dodging. Hell, Diablo 3 had active dodging if you were playing it on consoles. But active blocking, I feel like it's something that I haven't really seen in another RPG. Feel free to correct me in the comment section down below. But basically, active blocking means you actually have to press a button in order to block, bring up your shield, and, you know, your blocking is going to be directional, so you have to actually aim towards the thing that you are blocking. And I was like, this is so cool, because I've always preferred active blocking in games over having to use like, oh, here's a percentage chance of you blocking. I've never liked that. I've always preferred like, no, you put up your shield and you're blocking. Like, that's cool. And there's like a stun gauge whenever you take hits, and so you have a limit to how much you can block, and then you have to stop blocking. And I'll be very curious to see what type of skill combinations you can do with blocking, because you guys know me. I love shields. I love like thorn builds and repost builds, that type of stuff, where, you know, monsters hit you in the shield and then there's some kind of mechanic for you to fight back. And that just sounds like super fun to me. But basically the whole combat system is just way more engaging, right? Which is something that I personally like. It seems like the combat system is also a lot more deliberate. One thing that the developers have said is that they've taken a lot of inspiration from Souls-like games, which, I mean, as you guys know, now, naturally, there's also going to be people that already have been using the term, it's the Dark Souls of RPGs, which is almost feels like, oh, we're back in 2016, the Dark Souls of whatever, right? But yeah, that is one of the things that I like. I like the idea that the combat is much more deliberate, much more Souls-like, so to speak. And from that, we've seen some boss gameplay footage, and the bosses just look so engaging. You're going to be dodging stuff. There's going to be bullet hell phases. There's going to be openings that the boss is going to give you, and they just seem much more involved fights. And here's the thing. Some players have been saying that PoE 2 actually feels harder than PoE 1. It feels more challenging. It feels like the developers are like, no, we want to make this hard. And you guys know me, I'm like, This sounds fantastic. They're also adding some type of stun system. So the more you hit a boss, it starts building up a stun gauge. And whenever you actually stun the boss, that gives you an opening to deal more damage. And then there will be certain classes that will be able to take advantage of that. So you'll deal additional damage while the boss is stunned. And this works for, smaller minions as well. You can build up stun on minions too. So these are all things that have me super excited about it. Now, let's talk about the classes. Currently, the game is going to launch in early access with 6 classes, and each of these classes is going to have 2 ascendancies. Now, ascendancies are like an advanced form of the classes, so it's like a specialization that you go into, which is going to give you access to special skill nodes and stuff like that. But the 6 classes are Warrior, Monk, Mercenary, which is the crossbow class, Ranger, which is bow and poison, stuff like that, Sorceress, which is all about elemental and all of that, and then Witch, which is more about, there's a fire build with a special dog summon or whatever. Then there's like a blood mage build that you can do with the sorcerer, with the witch, but the witch is also one of the better summoning classes, is the idea that I get. Sorry about that, my phone. But these are the 6 classes that are going to be available at the beginning of early access, each of these classes with 2 ascendancies. But what the developers are doing is they're going to be adding 6 more classes during the early access period. So by the time they're done, there's going to be 12 classes. I didn't note down all of the names, but all of this is on the official website in case you're curious. And on top of that, they're also adding a new ascendancy to each of the classes. So by the time they're done with early access, you're looking at 12 classes, and each of those classes is going to have 3 ascendancies to a combined total of like 36 ascendancies, which is a ridiculous amount of variation. Now, one of the things that a lot of people always thought was intimidating is the passive tree for Path of Exile, which is massive, and which is the reason why a lot of people call it like a spreadsheet game and all of that stuff. And when it comes to that, the only thing that I would say is like, look, if you really want to learn one of these games, and this goes even for the original Diablo 2, you're going to have to brick a couple of characters to learn it. Like, I bricked a bunch of characters when I was playing Diablo 2. That's just the way that it goes. What do I mean by bricking a character? It means that eventually you're going to get to a point on your skill tree where it's like, well, this character is broken, and then you start a new one. But the thing about these games that I feel like a lot of people forget is that as you learn how to play the game and you play through the campaign and do all of that stuff, the second time around is going to be way faster. You're going to start skipping cutscenes, doing all of that stuff because you've already seen the story and you don't really care anymore. So you're just going through way faster than you did the first time around. You're also going to have additional knowledge because okay, this time I want to build a tree like this instead of doing it like last time. So I would just see the potential of bricking characters as a learning experience. Although I should also say that some of the changes that they've done to the passive tree makes it a little bit easier to respec, because now you can just respec using gold. So if you just farm gold, you'll be able to respec a lot easier than you were able to in the previous Path of Exile. But I would just accept that like a couple of characters that you're going to do are just going to be bricked. And I think that that is a healthier approach, because as long as you're having fun, because at the end of the day, when it comes to these games, these are seasonal games. So you play through it, and then eventually when they come up with a new season, you're expected to make a new character anyway. So I don't really see this as a big deal. And the passive skill tree was never really what kept me out of Path of Exile. What did keep me out a little bit of Path of Exile was the way that they would do their skill gems. You see, the way that it would work in the original Path of Exile is you would have items that you would pick up off the ground, and then these items would have sockets of a certain color, and then these sockets would potentially be linked. So the idea would be is you would have, okay, here's this helmet, and it's got 3 blue sockets, and they're all linked. This would be a really good helmet if you're playing like some type of spell casting build or a minion build or something like that, because you'll be able to put the blue skill gems in there, and then you'll be able to put some support gems in there to power up those skills. So say, for instance, you'd get like, I don't know, some frost bolt type of skill, and then you'd have a support which would be multi-shot, and that would make your frost bolt skill shoot 3 bolts. And you would put this on your little helmet, and that's how it would work. And it'd be like, oh, great, now I have this skill, and it's got these support things, and it's perfect. The problem with that was whenever you picked up a new helmet, you'd look at it, and it's like, oh, this actually has cool stats, but it doesn't have, like, the 3 blue sockets linked together. So you either have to, like, craft and do a bunch of stuff to that helmet in order to use it, and maybe the gain that you would get would not justify the currency expense of changing all of those things. And so it was always a little bit complicated to really figure out what to do with loot as you were learning how to play the original Path of Exile. Now, in Path of Exile 2, they completely changed that. So rather than equipping your skills onto your gear, which then would mean you're dependent on whatever sockets and colors and links the gear comes with, you know, now they have like a specific skill tab, which is where you put the gems. So what's going to happen is you're going to pick up these uncut gems, and they'll either be regular uncut gems, which you'll be able to cut into skills, and you can see all of the skills that are available in the game from the very beginning, and then you can just be like, no, I know I want this skill on my very first one, rather than waiting for the game to eventually drop that skill or for an NPC to give you that skill. You just go and you choose, okay, I want this skill now, pick up the skill, put it into your skill tab, and it's done, and you have that skill. And then you will pick up uncut support gems, and that will allow you to choose pretty much any support skill in the game to put into your into the skill that you're using, which basically means that you no longer have to think about, oh, how many slots do I have available on this piece of gear, how many links are on the thing, and what colors are they? Are they the right colors for the skills that I want to equip? Which was always a very frustrating part of playing the original Path of Exile, and they basically changed all of that to make it much more accessible and much more fun, in my opinion. If you're a Path of Exile veteran player, this is actually something that I'm very curious of knowing, and that is, do you prefer the way that they did it in Path of Exile 1, or do you prefer the way that they did it in Path of Exile 2? And while you're down there and, leaving a comment, make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this content, because I plan on doing a bunch of Path of Exile videos and Monster Hunter videos and all of that stuff, so you might enjoy that. But yeah, so I like the new skill gem system way more, and that is something that is more appealing to me. Now, gear is still going to have sockets, but you're going to be equipping runes on it, which the one thing that they showed is like, oh, this allows you to gain resistances and stuff like that, so to compensate some of the resistances that you might not have on your character and whatnot. So that seemed way cooler. And the thing is, in case you pick up an item that doesn't have a socket, you can salvage an item that does have a socket, and that will give you like a crafting material to put a socket in the item that you just picked up. And I was like, this is such a much better system from what I can tell. And again, I'm a noob when it comes to Path of Exile stuff, but it's just from what I've seen in their presentation, it looks so much better that I'm just super excited to check it out. Now, beyond that, there is still like crafting system that allows you to like upgrade items and do a bunch of stuff in that way, but I'm not super expert on the crafting of stuff. But they've done something that I really, really like, which is they improved the controls of the game as well. Now, the original Path of Exile was designed to be played in click to move, but for me, personally, I feel that click to move is kind of like an archaic, an archaic control scheme. I understand that a lot of people prefer it because you've played Path of Exile for God knows how long. And hey, if click to move works for you, like the control schemes is not something that I'm going to sit here and be like, no, I know what's best for the control schemes. Like, you want to use click to move, use it. But they are also supporting WASD, which I think is very, very important if you're a mouse and keyboard player. I think that WASD is a more interesting experience than necessarily using click to move. But for me, I'm very excited to see what control feels like, because I've been hearing a lot of good things from people that have played Path of Exile and they've gotten to test controller. They're saying like it feels really good. Particularly, they're talking about how the mercenary class almost feels like a twin stick shooter because you can actually move and aim your skills while you're moving. And I'm just like, hells yeah, dude, that sounds like a ton of fun. So yeah, the improvements to control are friggin' awesome. Another really cool thing that they're doing is the game is now going to support couch co-op. 2 players can create characters on the same account, or I believe there might even be a way of, having a player from a separate account create a character on your PC using their account. I don't know if that's a thing though, but I know that 2 players can create characters on the same account and just play together. And that is just such a cool thing. And I know that for a lot of people, they think, oh, couch co-op, who actually cares? I care. I care a lot, because I feel like this is one of the things that we've kind of lost, which is the social aspect of gaming, of going up to a friend's house and playing games with them at their house physically in the same location. It's just a much better experience. Like, you used to have LAN parties for stuff like this. And sure, you can do it with a LAN party. But I just feel like nowadays everybody's so focused on online that just having that feature for couch co-op makes it so much easier. So I'm super happy that they actually spent time doing that. And that is one of the things that I'm also really excited about. But now, let's talk about one of the things that is important to keep in mind. The game is launching on Friday in early access. That means the game is not complete. So one of the things that they've mentioned throughout their presentation is that they decided not to complete the campaign and instead focus on bringing more endgame systems. Because one of the things you got to keep in mind is the original Path of Exile has a ton of endgame systems already built into that game from over 10 years of development. So therefore, if you have players that are coming in from, a game that has a very robust endgame and they jump into Path of Exile 2 and there's no endgame there, those players are going to be very disappointed. So they chose not to do the final 3 acts of the campaign for the early access and instead bringing players a ton of endgame content. And I'm talking about an actual ton. I think there's like 7 different endgame content systems that are going to be present for the endgame of Path of Exile 2. It was to the point where as they were explaining it, I was listening to it, but I wasn't understanding most of it. I'm like, I have no idea what the hell these guys are talking about. There's just so much. There's the atlas and there's maps. And if you die in a map, that map gets blocked off. So you have to find another way. But this also means we can increase the rewards in the map. And then there's the breach system. And then there's these chest things that unlock. And then there's this system where you blow up things and there's loot there, but monsters come. And then there's the trials of ascendancy that you need to do in order to get your ascendancy class. And it's just like systems on top of systems on top of systems. Suffice it to say, I will be shocked if people get to like 200 hours in this early access and just be like, yeah, I've done everything. I'll be shocked if people say that they've done everything without hitting like 1,000 hours. Could be wrong. PoE veterans, let me know in the comment section down below. Because like I was seeing them talk about those endgame systems. I was like, this is crazy, dude. This is insane. Then there's also pinnacle bosses. So these are bosses that are going to be like super hard to get to, and you have to reach a bunch of different systems, and you get like one shot at beating these bosses. So it's actually pretty insane just the amount of content that they've worked on there. But it is important to mention, you only get the first 3 acts of the campaign. So the way that they're doing this is you get the first 3 acts of the campaign and then you do them again almost like in a New Game Plus mode where they're harder. And then once you complete the campaign twice, you go into endgame. And by the time they're done with the early access, what's going to happen is the repeat of the first 3 acts is going to be replaced by acts 3, 4, and 3, 5, 3, 4. Wait, what? It's going to be replaced by the acts 4, 5, and 6, and then they're going to remove the repeat of the 3 acts, and then by the time you finish the full campaign, you'll just enter endgame. And some of you guys might be wondering, okay, how long is the early access going to last? And the thing is, a lot of games tend to have this thing where it's like, oh, we're going to be on beta for how long? We're going to be on beta for a while. And the developers here of Path of Exile, they actually said, no, it's going to be a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 1 year. So between 6 months to a year, and the game will eventually release out of early access and it's going to be free to play. And yeah, I guess that's everything that I personally know about Path of Exile 2. And I'm super excited to jump in. And like I said, I'm going to be giving away a couple of game codes on Friday. So tune into the live stream if you want to, get a chance of getting one of those. But yeah, for now, that's going to be it. Let me know if you guys are also jumping into Path of Exile on Friday, or if you're just curious, tune into the stream. But yeah, I'm super pumped to see what Grinding Gear Games has been cooking. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all that jazz for more content on Path of Exile 2, Monster Hunter, whatever From Software has got cooking. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.